There once was a boy who chose to ignore all the things he'd been taught before. When reading a book, he'd start in the middle or begin at the end, so the plot was a riddle. His way with equations was not very hot. He twisted the numbers and tied them in knots. I wish I could say the ending was fine, that he used Revise-Wise TV, books and online, so that he could do his very best in the Key Stage 2 national tests. But instead, he bathed in a vat of jelly which solidified around his belly.
Watch Revise-Wise, supporting national tests for 11-year-olds, Saturday and Sunday mornings from 3 to 5 a.m. on BBC Two.
And make the most of what you know, or yours may also be a tale of woe.
This car will accelerate from 0 to 60 in 4.8 seconds.
I ran over to him, I picked him up and I knew he was dead.
It can reach 172 miles per hour.
I saw my son come into the world and I saw him go out.
But this car is entirely legal on the road.
That is an experience which no parent should ever have to go through.
The price we pay for speed. Panorama, Monday at 10 on BBC One.
Confronting the troublemakers, hard men at the sharp end with the doorman who's found God. Muscle is required in 15 minutes. The BBC News and Sport, first on BBC One with George Alagiah and Rob Bonnet.
David Trimble wants to know how and when the IRA will disarm. Without that, he will not return to a power-sharing government. The hijack captain says Britain should not make concessions to the gunman. And a nurse stabs a fellow worker to death in front of patients. Good evening. Politicians in Northern Ireland have been trading accusations following yesterday's suspension of the Assembly there. The Ulster Unionist leader, David Trimble, says the IRA must make it absolutely clear how and when they will disarm before his party could rejoin a power-sharing government. Sinn Féin President Gerry Adams described the Unionist-backed suspension of the Assembly a disaster.
This meeting could have been a crunch one for David Trimble, but after recent events, his stature in his party has risen. Mr Trimble also wanted to address his party's policy-making body with little in doubt about the position. It was the Ulster Unionists who most wanted devolution to be suspended. The resignations of Mr Trimble and his 3 ministerial colleagues would have collapsed the process. There's been a welcome in many quarters for the most recent engagement between the IRA and the decommissioning body, but to Unionists it's too little too late.
I see some ambiguous language. It's not clear to me from the face of the de Chaston report what it is he's referring to. So let us go through the simple little steps. First of all, we need people to tell us whether they're going to do it, how they're going to do it, when they're going to do it.
Sinn Féin standing by its view that the IRA's new position on a context for decommissioning is a major breakthrough. And the party's president accused the Northern Ireland Secretary, Peter Mandelson, of suspending devolution to protect David Trimble against his critics.
If we had delivered the IRA lock, stock and barrel in a way which the British government have never been able to do with 30 years of militarism, it would not have been enough yesterday. Because the whole project was about whatever argument there's going on within unionism.
The trust that had been growing gradually between Republican and Unionists has been replaced by bitter division. The review of the deadlock may well take some time, and there's no clear indication yet of how it's going to bridge that gap. Dennis Murray, BBC News, Belfast.
The crew of the hijacked Afghan jet, which ended up at Stansted Airport, say that threats were made to kill passengers and blow up the plane. All the hostages have now left Stansted and most are now on their way to a temporary immigration centre in Gloucestershire. But only 17 have asked to return to Afghanistan.
The shadow of the Taliban fell across what turned out to be a bizarre news conference. The 4 members of the flight crew had insisted on written questions submitted in advance before they agreed to appear. They didn't want to be put in a position where they might have to lie, they said. They decided which questions to answer, and these were put to them by the only person allowed to speak, a police press officer. The co-pilot said the worst moment was when the hijackers spotted armed police at Stansted.
They became very hysterical and very nervous, and they were shouting If the Stansted police do not remove those people, they will start killing the passenger or they will blow the aircraft.
Then, in demanding a tough stance against hijacking, he hinted that others might be thinking of fleeing in a similar way.
Please do not make any concession to hijacker because this thing will encourage the other tourists to take similar action.
The co-pilot said they had only escaped out of the flight deck window so as to leave the plane stranded without a crew. That, they said, was in the interest of the passengers. Tonight, the former hostages could be seen retrieving their baggage from an airport hangar before leaving for an immigration holding centre in Gloucestershire.
Only tomorrow will it be finally known how many of the hostages choose to go back to Afghanistan. And the number has been dropping all the time. Only 17 are now thought keen to go home.
Then, escorted by the police, the Afghan passengers finally left Stansted. But for the government, this remains a problem without an easy solution. Gavin Hewitt, BBC News.
The Home Office says it can't confirm reports that General Pinochet's health has got worse. Supporters of the former dictator based in Chile say members of his family are flying to Britain because they're so concerned. The Belgian government and human rights groups are fighting a legal battle to prevent General Pinochet being returned home. A male nurse has been stabbed to death by a colleague in front of patients at a hospital in Kent. Officials at Bromley Hospital have confirmed that a member of staff died from multiple stab wounds. A man was arrested soon afterwards and is being questioned by detectives.
Police were alerted to the stabbing at the Bromley Hospital shortly after 4:30 this afternoon. It's been confirmed that the incident on the orthopaedic ward involved 2 male colleagues. Horrified patients witnessed the attack in which a 34-year-old healthcare assistant received multiple stab wounds. He died at the scene. Tonight, the hospital said the tragedy had stunned both staff and patients.
They're naturally incredibly shocked. There was no way anyone could have understood the incident was going to occur, and those members of staff are now receiving support, as are any members of the public or patients who may have witnessed the event.
Metropolitan police officers have sealed off the ward, while the patients who saw the attack have been moved to another part of the hospital. According to the police, the suspect, a male nurse in his 30s, ran off but was arrested soon after. Police are now questioning him at a South London police station as part of a murder inquiry. But the hospital says it's desperately trying to understand what might have led to such a violent and tragic attack on one of its wards. John McIntyre, BBC News, Bromley.
Russian forces say they've attacked Chechen rebels in their mountain hideouts in the south of the Republic. The Russians claim to have seized several key positions, but as Alagiah reports from Ingushetia, they're also facing more accusations of atrocities following the fall of Grozny.
Moscow is pounding the rebels with everything it's got. It claims to be closing in on Chechen fighters. Maybe so, but this territory has always been a rebel stronghold. The fight could last for months. So much suffering has been caused in the name of victory. This was the funeral march for 2 sisters from Grozny. They were found in a well, charred almost beyond recognition. Relatives carried their remains to Ingushetia in plastic bags. They mourned today, according to Chechen tradition. Everyone here blames the Russians. As well as the grief, there is hate, and that could last for generations to come. We found Malika among the crowd, struggling with her sorrow and her terror. She told us she had seen a massacre with her own eyes. 12 old people shot in a minute. The Kremlin may deny any guilt, as it has done in the past, but no one here will listen. Day after day here, there are more allegations of war crimes by Russian troops. These claims are difficult to verify independently, but if true, Russian forces have carried out atrocities of every kind. Alagiah, BBC News, at the Sputnik refugee camp in Ingushetia.
Mount Etna in Sicily erupted spectacularly overnight. Fountains of lava streamed out of the southern side of the volcano, which has been spewing ashes and rock for the past week. The volcano's last major eruption was 9 years ago. The local population is not thought to be in danger because the lava is flowing away from built-up areas. Now, with a roundup of today's football and rugby and the rest of the sport, here's Rob Bonnet.
Thanks, George. Well, no goals for Stan Collymore in his first game for Leicester at Watford this afternoon, but he did hit the bar and managed plenty else besides to convince his manager Martin O'Neill that his midweek transfer might prove to be a good piece of business. The game itself finished as a 1-1 draw, with makeshift striker Matt Elliott scoring once again for Leicester. Elsewhere, an extraordinary game at Upton Park was settled by a Frank Lampard goal 7 minutes from time, West Ham beating Bradford 5-4. George Weah scored again for Chelsea as they came from behind to beat Wimbledon 3-1. And Coventry's Robbie Keane helped his side to a 3-2 win over Sunderland. Now, the matches between Leeds and Tottenham Hotspur, Newcastle against Manchester United and Sheffield Wednesday versus Southampton can all be seen on Match of the Day shortly. So, if you don't want to know the scores, look away now. In the Nationwide First Division, Charlton maintain their 4-point lead at the top of the table. Steve Brown with the second goal in their 2-0 win over Wolves. Manchester City stays second after beating Norwich 3-1. Ipswich beat Huddersfield 2-1, but Barnsley didn't have a game today. In the Scottish Premier League, a goal from John Spencer put Motherwell on their way to a 2-0 victory at Kilmarnock. The match between St Johnstone and Hibernian had to be abandoned at half-time because of snow. Viewers in Scotland can see highlights of the game between Dundee and Celtic in Sport Scene later this evening. So again, if you don't want to know that score in that match, look away now. Gloucester are back on top of Rugby Union's Allied Dunbar Premiership after a 31-13 defeat of Sale. But this morning's leaders Northampton have dropped down to third place. They were beaten 23-19 by Bristol at home thanks to a try during injury time.
Dawson. After a season consistent only for its inconsistency, it must have all seemed painfully familiar for Bristol. 3 points up and in control, only for Pat Lamb to bulldoze Northampton back into the match. And when Matt Dawson's scavengers' instincts allowed Matt Allen to make it 10-3 at half-time, the standard Northampton victory seemed a certainty. Instead, it was the doubts over the visitors that were emphatically laid to rest after the break. Agustin Pichon making it 15-all with 5 minutes to go, only to watch Dawson defy the gusting conditions and boot Northampton to apparent safety. But with the clock ticking into injury time, Bristol threw caution to the blustery wind with one final audacious attack. Dean Dewdney's initial break releasing winger Spencer Brown, and after outpacing Alan Bateman and then outwitting England new boy Ben Cohen, he squeezed home to secure a precious victory for Bristol. The cost for Northampton, though, could be even dearer. Andy Swiss, BBC News.
In Rugby League, Bradford Bulls are through to the 5th round of the Silkcut Challenge Cup after their victory over the newly merged Huddersfield-Sheffield Giants. 2 tries from 18-year-old Leon Price guided Bradford to victory by 32 points to 4. In snooker, Matthew Stevens will face Ken Doherty in the final of the Benson & Hedges Masters at Wembley. Stevens reached his 3rd major final of the season with a 6-2 victory over the former world champion John Parrott. Later, Doherty defeated Stephen Lee 6-0. Now racing in the Cheltenham Gold Cup favourite Seymour Business continued his impressive form at Newbury this afternoon. Last year's Gold Cup winner finished some 18 lengths clear of the field in the Aon Chase. Meanwhile, the 15-2 shot, Gios won the big race of the day at Newbury, the Tote Gold Trophy. Ridden by Mick Fitzgerald, Gios finished ahead Copeland in 2nd place and Hit and Run in 3rd. And pole vaulter Mike Edwards has been named by the IAAF as the week's 2nd British athlete to test positive for a banned substance. His sample revealed traces of the anabolic steroid stanozolol. George.
Thank you, Rob. And tonight's main news again. The Ulster Unionist leader David Trimble has said the IRA must make it absolutely clear how and when they will disarm before his party could rejoin a power-sharing government. That's all from the newsroom tonight. Good night.
Home Secretary Jack Straw goes on the record with John Humphreys tomorrow here on BBC One at midday.
Good evening. We're seeing a little snow settling even at lower levels across Scotland at the moment, but with a ridge of high pressure coming in for tomorrow, it promises to be drier and brighter for many of us. But a packet of showers at the moment, as you can see, across northern Britain, and even as they come across the Pennines, they're falling as snow even further south. And here we have some rain too. Now that'll brush across southern counties through the night as it clears, perhaps the odd little bit of fog, but there are plenty more showers to come further north, and they'll continue to pack in across Scotland. We could see up to 10 centimetres over the hills, blizzard-like conditions with the strength of the wind, and quite slippery underfoot as well, I think, some icy patches around. And there could be some icy problems tomorrow morning as well further south, given the showers and the rain clearing. In fact, the rain should clear fairly smartly after daybreak in the south, and then we're left with sunshine and wintry showers once again, although those wintry showers should become fewer in number as we head into the afternoon, becoming confined mostly to the northeast of Scotland, bar the odd rogue one. So more sunshine around, I think, tomorrow, and less wind, so feeling a bit more pleasant if you're out and about.
BBC Online has the latest weather forecasts and news 24 hours a day at www.bbc.co.uk/weather.
Justine, I've got a bit of a problem here.
The monarch of the Glen is torn between two lives.
Why don't you just go away?
Why don't you? Back to your beautiful girlfriend and your perfect life.
And caught between two women.
Men, sometimes you have to wipe their bottoms, sometimes you have to kick them.
What are you doing tonight?
Well, I was going to worm the dog. Now hush your mouth and give us a kiss.
Highland fling.
Justine.
Well, you've kissed virtually every woman in Scotland. Aren't you going to give me one?
In Monarch of the Glen, new drama coming in February to BBC One.
It was a joyous birth.
Oh, stinks in it.
With no teething problems.
Get out.
A smooth journey into adolescence. And it's still going strong.
You're nothing but a lying little slut.
Grown up with EastEnders.
What is Bianca famous for saying?
1, 2, 3!
Celebrate 15 years throughout this week on BBC One. Everyone's talking about it. Have you swapped these candles over?
It's Match of the Day in half an hour here on BBC One. But first, keeping the peace in Bristol's pubs and clubs, it's another busy night of confrontations for the men of muscle.